As some of you may or may not already know, reptiles aren't exactly known for their ability to handle the cold very well. And for the people who like to keep their reptiles outdoors, the winter can be a problem. But what if I told you that there were some species of reptiles that you didn't have to worry so much about? In this video, we're going to be talking about 5 cold-tolerant exotic reptiles that you can keep outdoors all year long. Well, most of the year. My name is Pierce LaValle. This is Pierce's Planet. Stick around. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are doing amazing. Happy New Year to you all. I hope your new year has started off great. So like I said in the intro, this video is all about cold-tolerant exotic reptiles that you can keep in their outdoor enclosures for a majority of the year, or depending on where you live, possibly even year-round. So when I'm thinking about moving a new reptile outdoors, how do I determine which species is more suitable to live outside than others? Well, the first thing that I do is I use an app called iNaturalist. Now, I'm not sponsored by iNaturalist, but I use this app all the time. And basically, it's an app that lets you go out into the field. You can take pictures of wildlife, and then people will come identify it for you. You can kind of tell people where they are, where to go looking for them. It's a really, really cool app. So the first thing that I do is I go on iNaturalist and I find a specific species' natural range. And then once I find their natural range, I look at different cities or metropolitan areas that are near that area, and I will look at what the climate in that area is. If the climate that that reptile lives in is similar to the climate that I live in, then I know that I should be able to put that reptile outdoors, no problem. Now, with that being said, that doesn't mean that if temperatures drop below 55 degrees, that your reptile shouldn't have a heat source. Just because a reptile comes from a specific climate and you know that they can handle drops in temperature, doesn't mean that you should make them handle drops in temperature without giving them extra heat sources. We want our reptiles thriving, not just surviving. Now, before we go fully into this video, I wanted to discuss a few rules that I came up with as I was making my list. The first one being that there are going to be no North American species on this list. And the reason why I did that is because if a reptile is native to the area, then obviously that means it can survive the climate that you live in. And usually when we go out and we're looking to add a new pet to our family, we're not looking for something that we can go out in our backyard and get. We're looking for something that's more exotic. If I would have done it that way, then this list would have been full of garter snakes, red-eared sliders, painted turtles, just things that I don't think are very exciting. So I wanted to make sure that I had an exotic animal list instead of just your normal native species list. And the second rule that I had for this list, with the exception of one, is that I wanted them to be larger reptiles. I wanted them to be reptiles that wowed your friends. I wanted them to be reptiles that you would basically need a large enclosure anyways, and so outdoor may be the only option for you. And with that being said, that brings me to my final point, and then I promise you guys we will get into the list. But this list is only going to apply to you if you live in a place that has a temperate or moderate climate. So, coming in at number 5 on the list, I have the green iguana. As many of you already know, green iguanas are a large lizard species that are native to Central and South America, but they have become an invasive species in Florida. And them being an invasive species in Florida is the exact reason why they made this list. Most people, when they think of Florida, they think of warm weather. But what a lot of people don't realize is that in the winters, Florida can actually get really cold as well. And these lizards are not just restricted to the Miami area. They're all over the place. They're in Tampa, they're in Orlando. They've even been found as far up north as Gainesville. And if you look at these areas do not have just warm year-round temperatures. In the winters, their temperatures can drop down into the 40s, and these green iguanas are surviving. When I look at the climate or the yearly averages of a place, let's just say Orlando, that has a high number of invasive green iguanas, I realize that that climate is not so different than the climate that I live here in Houston. And if iguanas are able to survive in a place like that, that means that they're hardy enough to be able to live outside out here. Now, obviously, like I said in the beginning of this video, that doesn't mean that that's not without help. Obviously, in the winter months, I would have to have an external heat source for my iguana to survive outdoors. And at some points in the year, I might not be able to leave him out there all year long. I might have to bring him in if the temperatures drop below 20 degrees. But it's just good to know that I would be able to keep that iguana outdoors for majority of the year. The iguanas in Florida are proving that they are able to withstand temperatures that can drop into the 50s and sometimes even into the 40s and still be able to survive and still be able to repopulate the area. So that's really impressive, and that just goes to show that they are a lot more cold tolerant than what people originally thought they were. Coming in at number 4 on the list is one that may surprise you, and that is the lace monitor. The lace monitor is a medium-sized monitor species that is native to the northeast all the way down through the southeast side of Australia. Most monitor species are going to require a very, very large enclosure, probably one that you're going to have to build in your backyard. And on top of that, most monitor species come from very warm and very humid environments. And the lace monitor is no exception. There's part of its range that is very warm and very humid. But there's also another part of its native range where it gets fairly cold in the winters. So a while back, I was doing research because I wanted to get a monitor species of my own. And I knew if I did get a monitor, I wanted it to live outdoors for majority of the year. And this is back when I lived in Sacramento. So as I was doing my research, like I told you guys before, going on iNaturalist, trying to find monitor species in different areas and trying to see what the climates were like, I found the lace monitor. And although a lot of the lace monitor's range is in a warmer, humid part of Australia, there is a large population of them that live in a colder area. So for example, I saw this town called Mildura in Australia, and a large lace monitor population is in the area, as you can see on iNaturalist. Then when I looked up Mildura's yearly temperatures, you can see it gets pretty cold out there, like into the 40s. And that made me realize that the lace monitor is adapted to be able to survive a colder environment. And actually, just as a side note, like the climate in Mildura is like almost identical to the climate in Sacramento, which is pretty crazy. Now, lace monitors are going to have survival skills out in the wild that helps them survive those cold temperatures that you simply just won't be able to replicate in your backyard. But knowing that they can handle colder temperatures does mean that you may be able to get away with leaving them outdoors in an outdoor enclosure for a little bit longer into the year than you would with other species, say an Asian water monitor. But just knowing that there is a monitor species out there that is a bit cold tolerant and you would be able to leave out in your backyard or in an outdoor enclosure for a longer portion of the year than say a croc monitor or an Asian water monitor is pretty cool, because monitors in general are awesome, and getting to see them outside in a more natural habitat would be like the best thing ever. Coming in at number 3 on the list is a reptile that I talk about quite often when it comes to cold weather, and that is the Sulcata tortoise. I've made a whole host of videos on Sulcata tortoises and what my process is, how I keep them warm in the winters, and in every video I just say Sulcata tortoises are extremely hardy. These tortoises can survive temperatures as low as 45 degrees Fahrenheit without any extra heating. Now, again, I wouldn't recommend that, but they can do it. And that takes a whole lot of stress away from you when you're a reptile keeper and you have animals that are outdoors. As you guys may or may not know already, I've had my Sulcatas for about 3 to 4 years. Originally, I was in Sacramento, California. Now I'm in the Houston, Texas area. I've probably only brought my Sulcatas indoors maybe on 3 occasions. On the few occasions that I did bring my Sulcata tortoises indoors, it was because the temperature dropped below 30 degrees. Because when the temperature drops below 30 degrees, that's when I start to get nervous. Not because I don't think that they wouldn't be able to handle it with their heat sources, but because if that heat source dies, if my power goes out, then we may have a problem. And that's saying something because both Sacramento and Houston can get fairly cold in the winters. In fact, we're about to have a cold snap here in Houston where the temperatures are gonna drop into the 30s. But even with temperatures dropping into the low 40s and even into the 30s, as long as the Sulcata tortoises have a heat source and have their heat lamps on them, they are perfectly fine, they're chilling. But with the right heated shelter, I feel confident in saying that Sulcata tortoises can stay outdoors year long as the temperatures aren't dropping below freezing. All right, and coming in at number 2 on the list is another reptile that I have a lot of hands-on experience with, and that is the tegu. Specifically though, the black and white tegu. Black and white tegus are a medium lizard that are native to South America, specifically countries like Argentina. These lizards are highly adaptable and they live in a wide range of habitats. But similarly to the green iguana, the reason why they made this list is because of their ability to be an invasive species in the United States. These lizards, along with the green iguana, have become an invasive species in Florida. But more impressive yet is they are also becoming an invasive species in South Carolina. There have been hundreds of tegu sightings in South Carolina, and it is feared that they might have actually established a population in the state. So why is that important? Well, because although South Carolina is a warmer state, it still can have very cold winters, and the fact that these tegus are able to survive in the wild out there is very impressive. It's just very impressive that these lizards are able to survive and thrive in that sort of climate. It just shows how adaptable that they are. And by knowing that information, if you live in a place that has a climate that is similar to South Carolina's, then you might be able to get away with leaving your tegu outdoors year-round. One of the adaptations that tegus have that help them survive cold weather is the fact that they brumate. So they go into almost like a hibernation state for reptiles, and that helps them survive cold temperatures. So just know that your tegu might start to brumate if you decide to leave them outdoors for the majority of the year, or depending on where you live, the entire year. In my opinion, a reptile that brumates is going to be way more well suited to life living outdoors than a reptile that doesn't brumate, because the reptile that brumates already has the tools to survive cold weather. But if you live in a temperate or subtropical climate, something similar to South Carolina, then you might be able to get away with leaving your tegus outdoors year-round, as long as you have the proper heating when winter comes. All right, and finally, last but certainly not least, number 1 is the Chinese box turtle. Now I know, I broke my size rule on this one, okay?
That's what she said.
Chinese box turtles are not large reptiles at all, but they're just too good and way too cold tolerant to not have on this list. And honestly, really, even the North American box turtle species could be put at number 1 with this one, but we aren't doing native. So the Chinese box turtle is number 1 on the list. In the wild, these turtles inhabit a multitude of environments and they are extremely hardy. They are known to be able to handle temperatures well into the 30s with no problem, and even sometimes into the 20s. They go into a dormant, basically like a brumation state whenever the weather gets too cold. So as long as you have a lot of substrate that they can dig in and really keep themselves warm in, they're gonna be perfectly fine outdoors, even in temperatures as low as 25 degrees. These are the 1 reptiles on this list that I would say that if you live in any of the areas that I mentioned, such as Florida or the South, Southern Texas, Arizona, California, you should have no problem keeping Chinese box turtles outdoors year-round as long as you have a heat source for them. And honestly, a lot of species of turtles and tortoises in general are extremely cold tolerant. Like, that could be a whole separate video one day. The Chinese box turtle takes the cake. I just believe that they are one of the most well-suited exotic reptiles for outdoor living. They got the cold hardiness down, and they're box turtles. I mean, they're awesome. So that's gonna do it for today, you guys. I hope that you all enjoyed the video. Just remember that if you do decide that you wanna keep reptiles outdoors, that you're doing your research, that you know what type of climate you live in, so that you can give your reptile the best life that it can possibly have. Always remember to give your outdoor reptiles heat if it starts to get colder. And if you don't know whether a temperature is too cold or not for your reptile, then that means that you need to heat them anyways cages or bring them indoors. Share your comments down below. Did you agree with this list? Is there any reptiles that you would add, or is there any reptiles that you would subtract from this list? Let me know down in the comments. Make sure you guys like this video. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. And please, please, please share this video. Until next time, everybody, my name is Pierce LaValle. We are in Pierce's Planet. And remember, it's all about the reps, baby. Peace.